There's a familiar foe at the top of the AFC, and they hold the number one seed, and all roads go through Kansas City. We'll discuss that and more here on Locked On NFL.
The barbershop is open and Tony Wiggins has a chair for you. He's ready with some real NFL talk. The local experts of Locked On bring their expertise, and Wiggy is ready with his clippers and shears. Sit down and enjoy. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
It's your team every day. We thank you for making us your first listen here on Locked On NFL that you can find wherever you get your podcasts, whether you watch them or listen to them. Make sure you tap into your location every single day, because here on Locked On NFL, what we do is use the local experts that know your teams around the NFL like no one else. And today, that expert is Chris Carter of Locked On Steelers. Here's what we're going to run down today, man. The Seahawks and the Bears go at it on Thursday Night Football, but guess what? There's a former Seahawk coach that wants to come back. That's Pete Carroll. And guess what? Rumor is he's interested in, you wouldn't believe it if I told you, coaching the Chicago Bears. So we'll discuss that. The Ravens have taken command of the AFC North. They finally got over that big hurdle of beating the Steelers, and they did it pretty convincingly. Chris will talk about that, of course, being from the AFC North. And the Chiefs seal the top seed in the AFC, what it means for the rest of the season and what it means for everybody else who's trying to get through them to win a Super Bowl. We'll make sure we tap on that. It is Crossover Thursday, so all of our shows around the Locked On Podcast Network are sponsored by Prize Picks. Download the app and use the code Locked On NFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Make sure you tap in Locked On NFL over on Amazon Music. That is Amazon Music for Locked On NFL. Chris, familiar foe at the top of the AFC, that would be the Kansas City Chiefs, man. They played the other day without Chris Jones, who is in the conversation of one of those GOAT defensive tackles. And they didn't miss a beat, man. They came into Pittsburgh, and it looked like they were going to play with their food at first, but they were able to hold the Steelers off and win a pretty impressive game.
No, yeah, they put the smackdown on the Steelers. I predicted on Locked On Steelers they were going to lose that game, and they did. The Steelers were going to lose that game, and they did. I looked at this Chiefs team. You looked at they've been playing especially better. Over the past month or so. You looked at look at their turnover margin. That turnover margin at one point was looking pretty rough through like the halfway point of the season. And then all of a sudden the turnovers went down for the offense, the turnovers going up for the defense, and they're improving. And they won the turnover again on Christmas against the team that was one of the best turnover teams on both sides of the ball in the NFL. The Steelers had the second best turnover differential in the NFL going into that game, and Russell Wilson interception. I think you also had a fumble. You put yourself in a rough spot there if you're the Steelers. You don't win the turnover battle against the team that's been the number one team in the AFC all season long, and is the back-to-back champs, 3-time Super Bowl champs in the last 5 years. So you're putting yourself behind the 8 ball, and that's the problem with the Steelers. But the Chiefs, they're doing what they're supposed to do, and they're playing better. And I think that a lot of people, and I said this going into the week, a lot of people that were looking at some of those past wins where they were barely squeaking out against the Raiders, barely squeaking out against the Panthers. This team was figuring some things out, and while they were winning, now they're still winning, and they've gotten even better, and now they're healthier, and they survived the game without Chris Jones, and now they're getting ready to just rest their guys to get really healthy for the playoffs as they're the 1 seed. That's going to be a problem. Winning in Kansas City is not easy. I don't care if you're Baltimore. I don't care if you're Buffalo, and they're the 2 primary contenders right now, with the Steelers being probably the next team in the AFC. And we just saw what happened to the Steelers. So this is going to be a tough one in the AFC again. If the Chiefs just walk through the conference again as they have all year.
From Chris Carter to Chris Clark, we got to listen to what Locked On Chiefs has to say about sewing up the number 1 seed, and then I'll give Chris an analogy about barely winning. We'll do that in just a second. Check this out.
Chiefs Kingdom, it is official. The Kansas City Chiefs are the number 1 seed in the NFL playoffs. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. Kansas City gets it done. They win 29-10 against the Pittsburgh Steelers in Pittsburgh. Huge Christmas gift to the franchise, to their fans. First time in their history they have won 15 games in the season. This is exactly what you want to see from this team right now. They moved to 15-1. They get the number 1 seed. The offense has looked even better than it did against the Houston Texans this week. Against the Steelers on a short week, it looked even better. They should be getting players back as soon as the playoffs start, which is they can rest everybody they need to for the next 21 days. This is exactly what you wanted. The Chiefs are the number 1 seed. A lot more to come on Locked On Chiefs.
Chris, saying that the Chiefs barely won is like knowing a dude benches 100 pounds more than you, and you watch him put that last plate on, and he has muscle failure, right? And you say, well, he only got it up once. That ain't failing, dude. He's still stronger than you, and that's what I keep trying to tell people. You got to figure out who's going to be good enough to beat them despite their warts. And there isn't one team that doesn't have their own warts or their own history that they're going to have to overcome. And while we keep talking about, oh, they barely winning, they're lucky. They're 15-1, man. That means that they have figured this thing out, how to win over and over. And now, guess what? Xavier Worthy, they're starting to target him 10, 11 times a game. You know, I know because I think I might win the football championship in my fantasy league because he's been targeted. They get Hollywood Brown back. And now Travis Kelce is all of a sudden wide open in the middle of the field again, like he was the other day against Pittsburgh. And I'm thinking, like, how are they able to do this, game plan, and consistently get people open? I just have no idea.
Granted, I think that I think that part of it was there were some miscommunications on the part of the Steelers. We did a lot of talking. Just check out Locked On Steelers for what Deshaun Elliott had to say after the game. I'll just say that much. There were some curse words that were dropped. But it's funny. You know, I was listening to Steelers fans talk after the loss. They said this was the most beatable team ever in the Chiefs years, and I'm like, the most beatable 15-1 team? Is that a thing? There's a reason the Chiefs are a dynasty right now. Like they're whooping tail up and down. And this is a team that last year was 11-6 going into the playoffs. People thought, okay, this is the year they get knocked off. You underestimate them at your own peril. And then you think that people would have learned last year or the year before that, 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 or the year it's been long enough in the Mahomes dynasty. Since 2018, there's only been one season where they haven't won at least 12 games. That's insane. Like that's how good this team is. You don't get that just by I don't care how much you eker this, that, and the third. This is a great team. And I said this going into the week. I said, listen, the Steelers, even though they were getting a little bit healthier, I didn't like this matchup for them. I thought this was just it was also the tail end of the 3 games in 11 days for them. And it was for the Chiefs and the Ravens too. But the Steelers were coming off of back-to-back road games against the Eagles, at the Ravens. And those are 2 tough teams. And then to come back on a short week and say, okay, play the best team in football, in the best record in football in your house. That was a lot. And they did not handle it well. And listen, the Steelers got their own problems, but the Chiefs have shown like, hey, they deserve to be looked at as the big bad wolf. They deserve. They said, hey, don't look over at the Lions, don't look over at the Bills. Remember us right here. And the Bills did get them earlier this year, but now they're the 1 seed, and now they're saying, Buffalo, if you want another shot at us, you got to come to Kansas City to do it,
or Baltimore, because it looks like Baltimore and Buffalo might be the 2 and 3 seed that might meet a week before. And that's going to be a big game. We're going to discuss the Ravens too. I tell you what, I'm going to leave y'all with this thought. There's going to be eventually, just like there's some, who would have won in their prime, Terrence Crawford or Floyd Mayweather, or who would have won in their prime, the 90s Bulls versus the 2000 whatever Golden State Warriors, 2016 Golden State, or whoever. I'll tell you the thing that people are going to start discussing. Side by side, the dynasty of the Kansas City Chiefs versus the dynasty of the Patriots. It's going to be very interesting when people start mentioning that the defensive coordinator that beat the Patriots 18-0 team was Steve Spagnuolo, who's now the defensive coordinator through all of this dynasty for the Chiefs. And people will start saying, we're going to give KC the advantage in that. I'm telling you, if they win it again, that's what you're going to hear, that this is the greatest dynasty of all time. And the difference is the defensive coordinator that beat those Patriots twice. We'll discuss that and more The Baltimore Ravens looking pretty dang on good. I thought they were dead in the wind a couple of weeks ago, and now they look like they're rounding into shape. We'll discuss that and more here on Locked On NFL. Today's show is sponsored and brought to you by Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? It helped me. That definitely happened to me. And I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for. And Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. You'll save so much money. Man, I'm telling you, I was paying for things 2 and 3 times through different apps, and Rocket Money got rid of that. It's like having a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitor your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has served and has saved a total of $500 million. That's $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/locked on today. That's rocketmoney.com/locked on. rocketmoney.com/locked on. All right, running it down here. December 26th, day after Christmas. My man Chris Carter, Tony Wiggins, the host of the Barbershop here, giving you all the things that happen around the NFL. Something else that happened around the NFL that involves, the Pittsburgh Steelers that Chris covers every day. But the Ravens finally got off the schneid, man. I didn't think they were going to do it. There are a lot of, I think Chris gave us 2 stats this year. One is, 3. When's the last time the Pittsburgh Steelers won in Philadelphia? I couldn't believe that when I heard it.
1965.
Yeah, and something about Cleveland winning in Pittsburgh, something crazy. But then the other one that was wild was I did not realize the Steelers early this year had beaten the Baltimore Ravens 7 out of 8 times, and then it turned into 8 out of 9. Well, Baltimore finally got a little bit of revenge yesterday, and they did it at the right time, Chris. Very good game by the Ravens. And here's the thing that one of the things I want to get into when I get your analysis. Everybody waking up all of a sudden yesterday saying, okay, the MVP race isn't over. What have y'all been watching? That dude been doing that all year.
It never was over. That's what I said all along. There were people who were really rushing to call this thing, and I think it was because they had certain biases in this race, and they were like, oh, it's over. Josh Allen's won, and I'm like, do you not see what Lamar Jackson's doing over there? Do you not see how he's turning things on? It's also a few weeks left in the game. Can we just keep an eye on how these 2 teams are going to perform? And also, let's look at Saquon Barkley. Let's look at Derrick Henry. 2 bad dudes. So I thought it was ridiculous to call that. But again, you just see Lamar Jackson is just a different weapon, man. When you look at all the wins, every single win the Ravens have had this season, they've scored 28 or more points. They are as good as this team is. They are dependent on that offense being prolific, and it's prolific because of Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry's added factors into it. But Zay Flowers, not a top tier receiver, but a good one. And now Lamar's got a good one, and he's used him. She's turned Rashad Bateman into a bigger weapon. Mark Andrews still, is still been a weapon. And you're seeing Lamar Jackson just take over things. He just passed up Michael Vick in all-time rushing yards. And that was one of those. I even said, hey, I think Josh Allen has the edge. I wouldn't call it just yet because I always got to see how the season ends. But man, Lamar Jackson. He's in a position to win his 3rd, and it's kind of crazy considering all the other good players we've seen in the NFL this year.
I think it was Cat Williams that said everybody kept saying some regular car would look like a Bentley. Yeah, until you had the stoplight and an actual Bentley pulls up next to it, and that's what Lamar Jackson is, man. Kevin Oestreicher, of course, is on an all-time high. He was ranting during the game that Lamar was the MVP. I'm going to give him a chance to go ahead and get it off his chest now because this hasn't happened very often when they beat the Pittsburgh Steelers. Check out KO.
The Baltimore Ravens dismantle the Houston Texans in Week 17 on Christmas. I'm Kevin Ostreicher, the host of Locked On Ravens, and what a Christmas and holiday gift it was as the Ravens win 31-2, a defensive shutout for the Baltimore Ravens defense, and an MVP statement game from Lamar Jackson, who had 3 total touchdowns and multiple big MVP moments throughout the game. Derrick Henry ran wild once again, and the Ravens, they look to be poised for a potential deep playoff run if they can continue playing like this was the most complete one of the season. And hopefully they can build on that as they now control their AFC North destiny. With a win against Cleveland in Week 18, they will be the AFC North champions. For more on the Ravens and their Week 17 win, be sure to check out the Locked On Ravens podcast and subscribe on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
They beat the Texans, but they moved in the first place in the NFC North. I thought it was a very significant game because they beat the Texans. That means that Houston is going to win the AFC South because no one else in that division has a pulse. But Houston is now the 4th seed. That means that whoever wins the North, if the Ravens hold up, is going to be the 2nd or 3rd seed, more likely the 3rd seed. That would mean that if everybody wins the way they're supposed to in the first round, they don't have to go to Kansas City before they have to go to Buffalo, and then that would mean whoever the Texans play, whether the Texans win or not, would have to be the first round game against the Chiefs. I think it's a little bit significant because they get the hard game last, and that's the one that they want, but you can't overlook Buffalo. But I saw them play side by side against the Bills. I don't think Buffalo can beat Baltimore.
Yeah, they blew them out 35-10 earlier in the year. And look, the Ravens, they're kind of doing what I said they would do at the beginning of the season. You go back and watch that AFC North preview. There was only one person who said Ravens, Steelers, Bengals, Browns. And that was yours truly, because I knew that the Ravens were a dangerous team. I thought the Steelers were a bit better than people give them credit for. A couple people in that show were predicting them to be dead last. I said, that ain't going to happen. Hasn't happened since 1989. And now here they are, they 2nd place. If the only way they can win the division is if Baltimore trips up, or if they beat the Bengals. I don't think Baltimore trips up against the Browns. I think that they close things out strong, win the division. And if things stay the way they are right now, they would get the Chargers. But that could flip from between the Chargers or the Broncos. It could also be the Steelers. I think if the Steelers lose to Cincinnati next week, they do have a 10-day break. I think that they'll get it together in time for that. But the Ravens, because now you're in the position where you can play Buffalo, and then you can hope that someone else can knock out the big bad Chiefs. As well there. I'd also say, I think that there are clearly the top 3 teams right now in the Chiefs, the Bills and the Ravens. And I'd say the Texans are very much, like you said, they've kind of benefited from playing in the bad division. But we've seen the Chargers, the Steelers, and the Broncos be good against playoff teams. The Steelers just lost 3 straight games, and that's where everyone's looking at. They lost to the Chiefs, the Eagles, the Ravens. And people say, oh, well, they can't beat playoff teams. They can't beat teams that are just good this year. They whooped up on cupcakes. Thing is, though, they're 5-0 against playoff teams, including one of those 5 wins being the Baltimore Ravens. And I do think that there's something to be said, hey, they haven't played well the last 3 weeks, but all season long they had played well against good teams, and this is the first stretch that they're on here. Maybe playing 3 straight playoff teams, 2 of those games back to back on the road, 2 of those games on short weeks. Maybe that does have an impact on the team late in the season. But I look at the Chargers and the Broncos, and I think, man, one of those teams could knock off somebody. But if you're the Ravens, you're in prime position right now. You have the chance. You're the 3 seed. You could beat one of those teams that I think is within their power to beat. Then you go to, and most likely you go to Buffalo, unless Buffalo gets upset, and then you go, and then you have the chance to say, hey, the Chiefs, this is the one team they can't get over the hurdle. Just like they couldn't get over the hurdle of beating the Steelers, this would be their chance to say we're ready to finally take these Chiefs down and actually get to the Super Bowl. I wouldn't put it past them to pull it off. In fact, if you go back and read in the Post Gazette in my preseason preview, I said Ravens Lions in the Super Bowl, and that's not looking so crazy right now.
Wow, it's not looking crazy. It'd look even better if Detroit didn't have all those injuries. I tell you what, though, this would be really, really sweet if those teams ended up playing in a game that came down to the last play to go to the Super Bowl, whether it's win or lose. It'd probably be a little sweeter if Baltimore won it. And then somebody can do a 30-30 on where it started and where it ended. You go back to that opening night game on Monday night, and Isaiah Likely's toe was out of bounds in Kansas City. Yep. And If it comes down to a play like that and a guy actually gets his toe in, but I think it would be one of the most wild stories that you could ever get in the National Football League. Now, I know somebody's back there saying this is a conspiracy theory, Wig. They're going to start orchestrating this stuff, but I don't think that's going to go down, but we'll see. Something that needs to happen is, one, people need to stop thinking that Caleb Williams is a bust, because I don't know if you've actually watched him play. It's not true. But there are going to be jobs that will be given out at the end of the year. Most people think that the Bears are going to make a move. There's some hot shot assistants, but there's an older guy that's involved with well, if he gets the Bears job, he'll be involved with both teams that will be playing on Thursday Night Football. Pete Carroll, talking about a comeback from Pete Carroll. We'll discuss that and more, and connected to Chicago in just a second here on Locked On NFL. Today's show is brought to you and sponsored by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are really, really close, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick a W, man. I love betting on which players will score a touchdown first and how many points each team will score. It's absolutely thrilling to know that you were able to guess that, get it right, and then fatten your pockets up at the same time. Now, not only can you bet on who will win the game, but FanDuel also has bets for which players will score first, how many points will each team score, all of that and more. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com. for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, continue along here on our Thursday show. Thursday crossover shows across the Locked On Podcast Network are presented by Prize Picks. Make sure you download the app. Use code Locked On NFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Let's talk about Pete Carroll wanting to come back and coach, and people are being very specific, saying that he wants to coach the Chicago Bears. Well, the Bears have an interim coach coaching right now. Nobody expects Thomas Brown to continue to be the coach after this season, but they do respect the front office and Ryan Poles, and there's this talk now, okay, who's better? Who's the quarterback builder? Who's the guy that can be the coach that can build that relationship and put the structure around young Caleb? There's a lot of talk about Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator from the Lions, who wants that job, but a whole bunch of talk about Pete Carroll this weekend. And starting to make a little sense to me, CC, when you think about it. Even though he's older, Pete Carroll could put a structure in that even when he leaves, you won't fall off. Look at the Seattle Seahawks right now. I think that's what he is. He's a franchise stabilizer at this point.
I do think he's a franchise stabilizer. At least his record in Seattle says that. You got to remember, though, he did have a short stint with the Jets, and then a short stint with the Patriots, neither of which really went that well. But there's no doubt that he deserves credit for what he did with the Seahawks. You go back and look at the Seahawks before he got there. They had a nice run for a little bit with Mike Holmgren. He set them up to be a Super Bowl contender. They lost to the Steelers back in 2005, but then after that crew kind of aged out, they went 4-12, 5-11, and then they were like, okay, let's get these guys out of here. Let's try to rebuild it. And then Pete Carroll inherited a tough team. Crazy enough, they went 7-9 the first 2 years, but people forget that first 7-9 year, that was good enough to win the NFC West, and that was the Beastquake game that they did that. And then that was in the midst of building up that juggernaut that was the Legion of Boom, that was young Russell Wilson. And when he got Russell Wilson, I think it was 2012 when he got him, he made him a threat, and then he was able to build an offense around him, and they won a Super Bowl. Went to 2, had like 5 straight years of winning double-digit games. They were a constant contender, and they were throughout basically the 2010s. And so if you want Pete Carroll to come and do that for the Bears, maybe he can, because I've said this all along. To me, I wasn't going to try to judge Caleb Williams purely off of just what he does, because he went to the place quarterbacks go to die. Name
man.
name the last great Chicago Bears quarterback. It's been pretty grim over there for their entire franchise's history in the modern era of the NFL. And when I look at this and I see that how Caleb Williams has played, I'm not too mad at him. I do think there's things he could handle that are better, but I mean, this was a rough situation he inherited. I said it all along. And they need someone that's going to be a culture changer in the Chicago Bears. And Pete Carroll, he's created successful culture. Now, I'm not so sure a guy who's 73 is the guy you want to bring in and do that, because you want to try to bring in someone. But sometimes maybe you're thinking like, hey, we've tried the young, maybe potentially, influencing coach that has the right things to say and the right calls, the right times, but maybe we need an older guy to kind of reset things around the Bears. I do think it's more of an organizational problem, but hey, Pete Carroll's, I think he's one of the best coaches of all time when you look at his college football resume and his NFL resume combined. So if you want to get that makes sense. But I do think the Bears gotta be like, hey, we got to get this right, because I do think Caleb Williams has some unique talents that make him special, but you need to do something with it. And they spoiled Justin Fields. I still think Justin Fields can be a good NFL quarterback. They spoiled several quarterbacks before both of them. They got to get it right, and so maybe going for the culture guy is the move.
Listen to Lauren Cox, and he'll explain why Caleb hasn't been as bad as you think.
Caleb Williams found his spark again against the Detroit Lions in Week 16, and that's way more important than the 9th straight loss and another bad defensive performance. I'm Lauren Cox, and I host the Locked On Bears podcast. And the Bears lost to the Lions, and that was kind of what we all expected. Ben Johnson's offense put up a bunch of points on this Bears defense, yada, yada, yada. But it was Caleb Williams finding that energy again, getting back to looking like the number 1 overall pick that the Bears drafted, really what was most important. The previous couple of games, he just didn't look confident, didn't look decisive, even as a runner, let alone as a thrower and being quick to get rid of the ball and hit receivers when they're open. But the offense opened up against Detroit. He had some really nice passes to Keenan Allen, a couple of nice touchdown drives when the running game got going. And it felt like a nice reminder that, yes, this quarterback still has that juice and isn't phoning it in for the rest of a bad rookie season.
He's been hurt a lot, in my opinion, Chris, by the success of both Bo Nix and Jaden Daniels. And they've had this team success. And Washington has done a really, really good job of allowing Daniels to still be electric, but putting the structure around him. What you see in Denver is total structure. When you're the number 1 pick, they're not going to treat you like your Bo Nix. They're not going to go total structure guy. They're going to go let him cook guy. That's just 2 different types of expectations. Although they probably need to do a little bit of both. Do what they've done with Jaden Daniels, like take a little bit of the pressure off of him, and that's an organizational thing, but also still design things to the point where you can take advantage of that superb talent that made him a top 3 pick in the first place.
No, yeah, I think that when you look at what the Bears situation is, that was the roughest situation to go into. The Commanders, they had talent, but I was wondering, could they put that talent together? And they certainly have. Jaden Daniels has been phenomenal. You look at what he did last week against the Eagles. Granted, Jalen Hurts got hurt, but that's still a really good Eagles defense that he carved up for 5 touchdowns. And I do think, like you said, when people look at the success of one rookie, they look at, others that are like, oh man, you must suck. And it's like, yeah, I don't evaluate. I don't evaluate that, too harshly on Caleb specifically. But again, if you're the Bears, you kind of have to recognize this isn't just a Caleb Williams thing. This isn't just a Justin Fields thing. This is something that's gone back to like the 80s. They don't develop quarterbacks. They haven't had one, even when they, they've been like a middling team. Like look at the Bengals right now. They picked the right quarterback in Joe Burrow and they've let him flourish. The problem is they can't do a lot of other things. And so it's not that they're bad at picking quarterbacks. It's not that they're bad at, developing an offense around their quarterback. They've been bad at a lot of other things that have caused them problems. The Bears, they don't have that advantage. They've done other things. In fact, they've had really good defenses. They've had really good run games. They haven't had a really good quarterback or a system for a really good quarterback. Jay Cutler might be the best quarterback in my lifetime for them. So
Right.
they got to get it right. And I think again, that's why you look at a coach like Pete Carroll.
It'll be all the talk tonight, maybe, at least in the pre-games, because the Seattle Seahawks, the team that Pete Carroll delivered a Super Bowl and that culture to, actually visit the Bears on Thursday night. Give me an assessment of the game and what it means for all involved.
I mean, the Seahawks are in a tough race right now. They are the lowest ranked team in the NFC that can still make the playoffs technically, and that's because the NFC West is so tight. And that's the thing about this is that you look at it, their only path to make the playoffs is to win the NFC West. They need the Rams to lose. They need to win out, I believe, to get that chance. The Seahawks, and this is your winnable game because you beat the Bears, you get the Rams at the end of the season. That's going to be a big playoff game to determine. And you lost to the Rams earlier, so you have to win that game to stand a chance. So I do think that the Seahawks, this is a big game for them. They need to play the kind of football that they know they can play. They've lost 2 straight, which again is disappointing because they were on a 4-game winning streak before that, and they were in a really good place. And again, 2 NFC North teams, the Packers and the Vikings, 2 pretty decent football teams there. And then you get the Bears. You can't lose to the 3rd NFC North team. You lose to that team, you put yourself wrong. I think you probably eliminate yourself if the Rams win this week. So I think it's a big game tonight. They got to get it done. I think they will get it done. I think that they have a lot of good things on them, but it's going to set up a really good matchup between them and the Rams in week 18 to determine who wins the NFC West.
No doubt about it. Games with ramifications. We absolutely love it. Glad you guys could join us here on Locked On NFL. Make sure you tap in tomorrow with Tyler Rowland, the Madman, for an AM show. He'll wake you up, man. It'll be like drinking some hot espresso, a double dose of it, and then you can slide back through the barbershop. And I'll be here with Matt Williamson like I always am every single Friday. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas. I hope everyone enjoyed their time. Chris, I appreciate you, brother. I know you got some bowl games to cover. Always something to cover up there in Pittsburgh. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next Thursday. And we'll see you guys all tomorrow here on Locked On NFL.